Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here at Garma this year for 2019, and I'm sure even if you're a regular return to Garma, you will be getting some special dialogue out of this weekend. I'd like to acknowledge the Governor-General, His Excellency David Hurley, and his wife Linda Hurley, the Northern Territory Administrator, Her Honour Vicky O'Halloran, and her husband Mr Craig O'Halloran, the local member, the member for Nhulunbuy, Gulkula, my parliamentary colleague, Senator Pat Dodson, thank you for joining us here at Garma, and the Shadow Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Linda Burney. Thank you for welcome. Thank you for being here. I'd also like to acknowledge the Chief Executive of the Northern Territory Department of Education, Vicky Bayliss. It's an honour to share the stage with you. And I want to pay a tribute to the MC, Yalma Yurupingu. She is an absolutely amazing woman. I feel extremely privileged to have been able to grow up with my parents being good friends with Yalma and her late husband, and she has absolutely dedicated her entire life to education, and particularly bilingual education in the Northern Territory. So thank you, Yalma. It's a pleasure to be introduced by you today. I would like to acknowledge the Gumatj clan, the traditional owners for this particular area, the Gulkula Garma site, whose beautiful land, as we see, we have a pretty ordinary view out the side here. Absolutely spectacular and stunning country. We're very lucky to be able to share this wonderful site with our traditional owners. And I pay my respects to the Yolngu people of this particular region and acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are here sharing in Garma Festival for 2019. I pay my respects to our elders past, present, and our future and emerging leaders. This year's theme, Pathways to Our Future, is quite timely when I'm talking about the support that we're offering through the Northern Territory Government and in particular through Department of Education. We've heard some very strong dialogue and conversations already this morning and throughout the afternoon, and I'm sure we'll have many more conversations throughout this weekend in regards to this year's Garma theme. It is exciting that in 2019 we are also celebrating the International Year of Indigenous Languages, and I acknowledge the Indigenous Literacy Foundation, who earlier today had the privilege of watching the launch of the two books. So congratulations to the ILF and your hard work in that space and celebrating Indigenous languages, not just this year, but every year. And in acknowledging some key milestones this year in the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly and Parliament, the member for Nhulunbuy, Gulkula, for the first time was granted through our standing orders in Parliament the right to use a translator to be able to deliver and represent his electorate in Yulnumata. So thank you, Yingyia, for breaking through that glass ceiling for us. As a proud Territorian, the member for Arnhem, and this is not my electorate, it's Yingyia's, but we're neighbouring parliamentary colleagues, and my electorate goes a bit further down the coast. It's an absolute privilege to be standing here representing the Northern Territory Government as the Minister for Education, Aboriginal Affairs and Workforce Training. I strongly believe, and it's something that my parents have instilled in me, that education creates pathways to opportunity and pathways to a brighter future. We know that access to high quality education for our young people here in the Territory means more options and opportunities for a strong future. The Territory Labor Government is heavily invested in improving Aboriginal education across the Northern Territory and creating those opportunities for all of our Territory children, students and young people to reach their full potential. We know that student opportunities and pathways are enhanced through access to education right on country. The 10-year Northern Territory Education Indigenous Education Strategy is a long-term approach to improving outcomes for our Aboriginal Territory students. We have successful programs here in the Territory for our schools that are based on country, with language and culture honoured for our students and our Aboriginal educators to enhance the opportunity to grow, learn and achieve for all Territory students. I'd like to highlight one of our key programs in the Northern Territory, which is our Families as First Teachers program, or FAFT. This year we celebrate our 10-year anniversary of the FAFT program across the Northern Territory, which continues to provide our Territory children, Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal, the best possible start to life. We know that those critical years between birth and 5 years old, those first 1,000 days in a child's life, are absolutely critical to getting the foundational support that we need to provide us to provide a positive long-term life learning journey. Our FAFT program enhances our children's lifelong education, and not just in education, health, well-being, cultural and language support through this particular program, and supporting the families who we know are our children's first teachers. There are currently 43 FAFT sites across the Northern Territory, including down the road Yirrkala, the Yirrkala Homelands and Gunyara, also known as Ski Beach. These programs are operating. FAFT continues to see an increased engagement right across the Territory, and it started out as a remote program and it has now started to move into our urban areas. Across the Territory, more than 1,800 children and families have been participating in FAFT so far this year. It is a strong model. It's a community-led model which engages parents, caregivers and educators across the community, and those support wraparound services that are so vital to providing that strong foundation for that 0 to 5 children in the Territory. One of the very first FAFT sites was established at Yirrkala here in the Nhulunbuy region. Since then, it has continued to provide quality early learning programs for hundreds of Yolngu children and Aboriginal children and non-Aboriginal children across the Territory. FAFT not only creates opportunities for our children who are participating in the program, but also our families and our Aboriginal staff who work in those programs. And I am proud as the Northern Territory Education Minister to say that more than half of the staff working in our FAFT sites right across the Northern Territory, from Tiwi Islands down through to the Western Australia, the Queensland and the South Australian border, are Aboriginal staff. We have Aboriginal people leading these programs in the FAFT sites, and I'm very proud to be able to support that as Minister. Through our FAFT program, we are creating and building further capacity of our staff in our local communities and the creation of opportunities beyond their current working environments. So it's a pretty exciting space to be in. Our Territory Labor Government have committed to facilitating real community involvement in local decision making for our Territory communities, and in particular in the education space. And we've heard that need and that want and that desire and that history already here today through the Education Forum. We are actively strengthening the capacity of Aboriginal people in our remote communities to help make decisions about the best way to deliver education in their community and in their school. Local people driving this change, because too long people have been told how to do things in remote communities and not listened to. So it's a big journey that we're on as government, and it's a journey that's already started and is continuing today. The collaborative focus will help drive improved attendance and educational outcomes in some of our small schools, but also some of our larger schools across the Territory. The Chief Minister, the Honourable Michael Gunner, is very clear in his direction through the Northern Territory Government that as government we need to break down those silos of our agencies. We need to break down those silos across our departments, and we need to put front and centre the child. Not what education can do for the child, not what health can do for a child, not what police or Territory families can do for a child in their separate agencies, but putting front and centre the needs of the child and our agencies working and wrapping around the needs of that child, their families and their caregivers. 2 years, almost 3 years I should say, 3 years of our government so far, and we are only just seeing now some of the fruits of that labour. Our talk is now thankfully turning into action, and I think we're seeing some of those positive silos, some of the positive effects of those silos breaking down across the Northern Territory to see that benefit to the individual child and their families and caregivers. And again, I acknowledge we have a long way to go, but the seeds have been planted and we're trying to water them pretty hard. And an example we heard earlier from the Dupama Foundation Learning Program was about those intrinsically linked, overlapping agencies and all the different fingers in the pie that we can see. So I know that's been a challenge here in this region and trying to unpick some of those layers. We're trying to do that right across the Northern Territory through the Northern Territory Labor Government's approach. The Education Department is currently working with 7 schools to participate in the Community School-Led Initiative. Gulkula School and Gulkula Homeland School are 2 of those 7 schools that have been involved in the community-led schools journey so far. For schools keen to take the first steps in regards to community-led initiatives, and this is a long journey, we've undertaken community engagement to establish local engagement advisory groups in over 40 remote and very remote communities across the NT. These advisory groups build the capacity of Aboriginal parents, families, supporters to work with the local schools and inform and influence education decisions that impact their child and their child's learning journey. There are a number of Arnhem schools working towards the establishment of the local engagement advisory groups, and towards the end of this year we hope to see many more. This is the first step towards community-led schooling model, which we hope to ingrain in Territory education. As I mentioned, the International Year of Indigenous Languages. This gives the Department of Education an absolute opportunity to reflect on the work that we have already done and work that is still needed to strengthen, reawaken and preserve our Aboriginal languages here in the Territory, and to work with our experts, our children and our families and our caregivers who speak language and hold language and maintenance of language as an absolute priority. We know the importance of fostering language diversity and the significance of language to Aboriginal identity and culture. Our languages allow us to understand country, the history of that country, explore our relationships, and to drive our aspirations for the future. We know the rapid loss of Indigenous language across Australia is a threat, and it poses more than a threat just to the education and the history and culture. It's also a threat to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health and wellbeing. Here in the Northern Territory, we know the continuing use of Indigenous languages adds value to the social and economic fabric of our society and our communities. Fostering language and cultural diversity makes us stronger together. Our Indigenous Languages and Cultures program in the Northern Territory Education Department provides the opportunity for students to engage with Aboriginal culture and knowledge and experiences through their learning. A key strength of this program is the ownership that elders and community leaders, who are the custodians of our languages and the holders of knowledge, have a thought out and well-supported process to establish and implement curriculum that is a priority for our communities. I'm very proud to say in the Northern Territory, we currently deliver Indigenous Languages and Cultures program to 43 of our schools. That is over 3,000 Territory students participating in Indigenous Languages and Cultures program right across the NT. In addition, we have 9 Territory schools, including Gulkula School, that operates a bilingual or a revitalisation program. And as I mentioned, Yolme is one of those key people in Gulkula, and they have a wonderful language production centre. If you do get a chance, Yolme's the lady to talk to. The use of students in their first languages to teach areas of the Australian curriculum, including literacy and numeracy, is important in providing that strong foundation for the future of the Territory. And in my travels as Minister for Education over the past 12 months, I've been able to interact and engage with schools, with educators right across the NT. We have more schools wanting to engage in providing language opportunities in school and supporting the curriculum at hand. Through the Indigenous Languages and Cultures program, Territory students are strengthening and maintaining culture and language through working with elders, teachers, and our cultural leaders. We have over 15,000 Aboriginal students in our schools in the NT, and this program is an important action under our 10-year Indigenous education strategy. An exciting program which creates pathways for our Territory students in Certificates 2 and 3 in applied languages being offered in 4 of our Territory schools, including Gulkula School and Shepparton College on Elcho Island. This creates sustainable pathways for Territory kids to seek employment and opportunities in their schools, their communities and beyond. We have a number of successful programs operating in our Territory schools that are based around learning on country. One such example of learning on country is a program at the Maningrida College in Arnhem. Over the past couple of months, the school's Learning on Country program, in collaboration with the CSIRO and the Gulk Rangers, have been building and setting traps to understand the impacts of animals in the surrounding area. Their research of working with the CSIRO will help provide better knowledge in animal management and reduce environmental impacts produced by animals, in particular our feral animals. Having a project with the CSIRO means real-world learning in sciences. And for Maningrida's Learning on Country program and the students and teachers and educators involved, it's bringing together traditional knowledge system and the Western science. Through this particular project, students are completing units in a Certificate 2 of Conservation and Land Management. Here, we can see the engagement of students gaining real life skills, transferable skills, and more importantly, gaining that long-term foundation for learning through the successful completion of their qualifications through language and culture. In 2016, we committed to 500 more Aboriginal people filling their role as a teacher, police officer, or a nurse by 2026. In order to grow our Aboriginal workforce across the Territory, and particularly in our schools, we have a range of initiatives which focus on recruitment, development, professional learning and retainment of our Aboriginal staff. For example, we continue to grow the capacity of our assistant teachers who support their career pathways who are teaching in our community schools. By growing and upskilling our assistant teachers, we are creating stronger schools and more opportunity for local employment. Just this year, 10 assistant teachers from Gulkula Homeland School have commenced a Certificate 3 in Family Wellbeing through the Bachelor Institute of Indigenous Tertiary Education. Across North East Arnhem Land, it is encouraging that all of our assistant teacher roles are filled by Aboriginal people, all of our assistant teacher roles. Our Early Years Rewarding Careers initiative provides Aboriginal people with education and employment opportunities in the early childhood education and care sector. And I've heard very clearly in the past 12 months, and again here today, and I'm sure ongoing conversation about the need to support even further our Aboriginal teachers, and many people have spoken to me about the reinstallation of the Remote Aboriginal Teacher Education Program, or RATE, and this is something that I'm working on with our Department of Education and looking at what are the pathways that we can better support those people on the ground at the forefront, and that is our Aboriginal staff. Education holds an important place in both our Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal cultures, and providing the bridge between modern and ancient cultures. By ensuring our students are engaged in education, we can help those young people walk even more strongly in both worlds. Education, as we hear often time and time again, and it's because it's true, education is the key. Ensuring our students in the Territory are engaged in education and engaged in relevant education. Again, education being the key to opening the doors for those pathways, those opportunities for our Aboriginal Territorians and all of our young Territorians to have a bright future. It's an absolute honour and privilege to speak here today as the Northern Territory Minister for Education, Workforce Training and Aboriginal Affairs, and I look forward to more conversations and dialogue for Garma 2019.